I think we actively need to start boycotting them for them to really realize that this is actually terrible media they're putting out. And it's not just that they're putting out terrible media, they're actively destroying franchises that have been around for decades.
Mm-hmm.
They're destroying Marvel, they're destroying Star Wars, they're destroying Tron now. And it's like, is there nothing that Disney cannot soil at this point?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of A Lost Plot, the podcast by storytellers for storytellers so that we can tell better stories ourselves. As always, I'm your host, Maverick, and today we have back with us our co-host, Andrew, to review the third installment in the Tron franchise that just came out this weekend. That's right, we're talking about Tron Ares, the 2025 American science fiction film with a screenplay by David DeGilio, whatever, and Jesse Wigato, and the screenplay by Jesse as well, with directed by Joachim Ronning. So they've had a different writer for each of these and a different director for each of these as well. And we will see how that evolution has changed the story again in this third installment today. So, Andrew, what is your initial impression and rating of Tron Ares?
Visually stunning. Good music. The themes are... It's a more theme-heavy film. I think it does a disservice to Tron Legacy. And I'll get into why as we progress. My overall rating was a 5.4.
Oh, okay. There you go. Not too shabby, honestly. I know your initial impressions were pretty low just looking at those commercials for this film. So seeing it and saying, okay, there's actually something there is a pretty remarkable standpoint to come from. I myself this is one of those few films where I walked out of the theater and recalled sitting in the chair trying to keep myself controlled, if you will. And I was surprised that this was the case for me because normally, our mantra, we're a lost plot here. We think that Disney is trash. And yet at the same time, this was one of those few series that I looked at and I thought, this has some hope for me. This is the film that I look at for Disney as a whole. This is the one maybe shining light I've seen in any of the recent films they've released that has a series that has actually had an upward trajectory, right? The 1980s film we already talked about 2 weeks ago, kind of a piece of garbage in our opinion. Not the greatest piece, but it had a lot going for it at the time, and it was respectable for the time. But standing up to a true quality story, we didn't think there was so much there. Then we got to Tron Legacy, and this was far and above, much better than the original film. And so I looked at that and went, wow, Disney took something and made it better. This is one of those few times where I went, wow, kudos to Disney. They did something great. And so my thought was, they have had so much garbage coming out recently, and there is just so much that they have been missing the mark on. And this would be their one redeeming thing that it's we've taken this and only made it go uphill from here. And this, I was genuinely upset because I think that they took the film and in so many ways took so much of the content and so many of the ideas that are fundamental to the Tron series and staying true to the Tron series, and then also just adding stuff that I frankly think is garbage in this new one that shouldn't have been there, that was in there in this one, and basically botched the film. I gave it a 2.45. I did not think this was a great film. I would not watch it again, and I'm sure we will have an interesting discussion as to why. So if you're interested to hear more, obviously there's some disagreement here just in those two ratings. A 2.45 versus a 5.7 is nowhere near the same review. So, all right, whatever. 3 points above where I'm at is a pretty significant deviation between the two of us. So we'll look into why that was the case today. But before we get into that, if you are unfamiliar with the story and want to know what this is about, Andrew, you want to give everyone a summary of Tron Ares?
Yeah, so warning, this will be spoiler heavy if you haven't seen this film, considering it's only been out for 2 days. Tron Ares takes place, geez, I don't even know how many years after Tron Legacy, presumably about a decade and a half. We get NCOM with the absence of Sam Flynn and Cora and pretty much the entire cast of both of the previous films. This movie rejects the idea that Tron Legacy took, where it calls back to a lot of things and just goes, we're going to make something completely different, referencing only the grid, pretty much. You get the new CEO, a woman, what is her name? Eve? Is that right?
Eve. Yep.
Um,
It's
and
Eve and
she is
Tessa,
off.
I believe, is the other sister.
Yes, and she is trying to find the quote unquote permanence code. It is a code that allows you to take things from the digital world and permanently place them in into reality. And currently the problem that everyone's facing is that they can transport things from the digital world to reality, but it only lasts for 29 minutes. And you get this with Gillian Dillinger, the grandson of Edward Dillinger, the villain from the original film, and the son of Dillinger, who was on the board of NCOM in the second film. The plot continues, showing that Dillinger is trying to make military tech, and he has this great program named Ares. And Ares' whole bit is that he is the perfect soldier, and he's made to be expendable and follow instructions to the letter. Well, guess what? Turns out Ares, from the get-go, doesn't follow orders to the letter and decides to do things his own way. And so he rejects directives, he brings himself to the real world, and he saves Eve, and he gets the permanence code for himself by going into the original grid from the 1982 Tron and interacting with some iteration of Kevin Flynn. He then comes back to the real world, fights off the bad guys, and everyone's happy.
There you go. So that's the film. We're going to get into all of the details into what goes on in this, but let's get right into it. Starting off, as we always do, with that opening scene. You have that opening montage where they explain, hey, Sam Flynn, the main character of the last film, he's not around anymore. We have these two new dynamic duo, these two Asian chicks, Tessa and Eve, who have taken over NCOM and are leading it in the direction toward the future. And you have a little bit about the science aspect they're trying to go toward with this company, and then you have the opposite company, Dillinger, rising up as a competitor. What were your thoughts on that opening scene, how they introduce us to this character of Eve and to Dillinger? They show these two back to back pretty early on. What are your thoughts?
I feel like I should get this out of the way here. My review,
Classic
in terms
Andrew.
of my personal enjoyment of this film, would probably be a lot closer to Mavericks. I think one of the reasons it's higher is because I'm trying to evaluate this movie on its face.
And
I also am trying to be contrarian because Maverick is great to argue with.
Okay.
But there are some things in this film that really do irk me, which is why, right, a 5.4 is not really in the rewatch range for me. It would need to be like a 6 to an 8, to a 9. The biggest problems for this film are the fundamentals for the plot itself, for how they're building this. Number one, Sam Flynn is nowhere to be seen. I find the idea that he steps away from his father's company to completely undermine like the entire arc of Tron Legacy. The entire point of that film was Sam Flynn is now embracing his role as the CEO. But now we find out a decade or a decade and a half later, Sam Flynn just went about his old ways and regressed, which means all of that character arc and growth has been undone in the matter of like 5 minutes. Instead, we're given these new CEOs who, honestly, I don't give a crap about. I have no reason to care for them. I'm constantly told that she is struggling and her life sucks, but okay, cool. Why? I'm not given any real emotional buy-in for her character. The second thing is the very idea of a permanence code raises a lot of questions for the original stakes of the first film, or the Tron Legacy film. In Tron Legacy, Clue is trying to bring himself to the real world. We were never given the idea that there was some sort of permanence code required for him to remain in the real world.
Hmm.
And so why was this never brought up? Clearly in this film, some iteration of Kevin Flynn knew of its existence, um, and gives it to Ares. So why was it such a problem if Clue could never survive in the real world and Kevin could just escape and shut down the grid and Clue would disappear in under 30 minutes? So I think those two things right off the get go for the opener were really left a really bad taste in my mouth as the movie progressed. Um, with
Sure.
just like, go ahead.
No, like I think that that's totally, in some ways, totally legitimate, right? But just to play the devil's advocate, because I think it's fair to try to get, strongman the argument here and not try to make it weak. I think that like some of that is something that you wouldn't see until they exited into the real world, regardless, right? So sure, we don't have any indication that Clue would have this problem, but also we probably wouldn't see that until he actually entered the real world, for one. For two, maybe it had something to do with the code that was built into the disk that's Kevin Flynn had, right? That the God particle was part of that, and so he would already have that if he used that to exit into the real world. So there is like potentially ways that could be explained.
I guess I just find that like the idea that the permanence code comes up now to be very convenient. I
Oh, for
think,
sure, it
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah, yeah,
convenient.
yeah. I'm not, I'm
It
not,
is
I'm not
literally
like,
the plot device that's like plopped in front of you at the very beginning of the film to tell you why this movie must exist.
yes, yeah. Now, here's the thing. I can accept the idea that maybe Dillinger's grid hasn't figured out permanence, right? Because his
Mhm.
grid is completely separate. It's just a security
Right.
grid. Whereas
Mhm.
Kevin Flynn's been building his grid for decades, and he's got even his 80s grid. He's got the grid from Tron Legacy. I don't really buy the idea that NCOM doesn't have it, I guess. I think that ends up being where I have problems. I think Dillinger's struggle to get the permanence code makes a lot more sense. Um, and I think overall, going into this film, the reason Tron Legacy, in my mind, or one of the main reasons it did so well, is that it was able to call back to the original film and the ideas in a more nuanced way without shoving it down your throat, but also
Mhm.
making it better, right? It took all these ideas of the grid, of programs, of having a primary purpose as a program, and it expanded those to the degree that you actually got a phenomenal film, in my opinion. Tron Ares takes all of
Yeah.
that and throws it in the trash and then makes their own film just by loosely referencing the grid and then throwing in this little shtick where Ares goes to the 80s grid and you get like these little you see like where Kevin Flynn blew a hole in the side of the light cycle battle and it's like, oh, the people from 1982 will freak out now because they get to see this like 5 minute blip on the screen, which is, stereotypical Disney, to be completely honest with you. Um, just throw little Easter eggs in there, flashy lights, lots of music, boom, equals a good movie.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that the a lot of the fights or not fights, the way that the grid is animated, right? The CGI for it, the music is very entertaining.
Mhm.
Um, I think they just, and I do think that they go into some themes and ideas that are interesting. I just don't think they fit in the Tron world, if that makes sense.
Sure. And I think that some of this leads to a broader discussion of why they went the route that they did, right? Which is this is relatively early on in the discussion to have this, but it's perfectly fine since you brought it up. I think it was interesting because I was really confused as well, especially because I watched this as a back to back with Tron Legacy and Tron Ares. And Tron Legacy, absolute baller film. Sit there, watch that ending climactic scene. I'm like, yes,
Oh yeah,
still so good. You know, back to back go right into Tron Ares, and there is basically nothing to do with what I just watched. And I'm sitting there going, what? What, like, why did I watch a double feature at that point? Like, this
yeah.
is this is totally different. What am I doing? And so I was very confused from the start on that. And so I had to look it up a bit. Apparently, because there was discussions on whether or not Sam Flynn was going to come back, and they tried to ask him. He was pretty vague, the actor for Sam, on why he didn't come back. But the creators of the film talked about how they wanted this to be basically a new story for a new generation, which in some ways is like, okay, that makes sense. But one, Tron Legacy didn't need to do that. And in fact, that was a much longer gap in time than what we got between Tron Legacy and Tron Ares. We're talking about like a 30-year time gap versus a 15-year time gap. 30-year time gap, they use the
True.
same characters, they use the same world, they use the same elements, and it was amazing. So the idea that you need to tell a whole new story for a new generation with new characters and new ideas and this new grid and all of that is inherently not necessary. But secondarily, it's also like what is, if you're going to do that, tell a different story. Don't make it a Tron story. Like, this doesn't need to be about Tron. In fact, spoiler alert, it's not about Tron at all. So
Literally the
there's that
biggest
too.
letdown of the entire film, by the
Yeah,
way. Actually
we'll
pissed me
get to that
off.
in a bit. But yeah, I knew you'd be so mad on that one for sure. But and we even talked about that. Like, there was so much potential with characters like that. We'll get into that. We'll get into the characters in a bit. But like, the fact that they just didn't need to use this world if they wanted to tell this inherently completely different story to do it. So it was definitely pulling into a cachet that they thought would pay off, and I don't think it did. I think it actually ruined a lot of people's taste for the Tron franchise by creating a story like this.
Yeah, I think. I mean, this is exactly what I said about Star Wars Episode 8. This is the exact same conversation. Okay,
Mhm.
the idea
Except there's
that
no Sean here.
yeah, okay, Sean. Um, the
Defend
the
your favorite film.
yeah, the idea that Disney has films where they go, we want to make it for a new generation. So let's like loosely take some of the ideas that exist within this universe, but make it our own thing really pisses me off because you're taking an established universe with an established fandom, with established characters, world building, rules for that world, magic systems, if you will, like the Force in Star Wars, or like with Tron, the way that programs fundamentally function and have functioned the entire time, and you just undo it because you want to. You can make a movie about a program who goes AWOL without it being Tron. There are there's so many sci-fi films that you could look at and go, "Oh, look, there's a rogue program. There's a rogue person. They're fighting back against the system. Wow, how original of you." But now we just want it to be Tron. It's just like it irks me. Okay, it irks me. And honestly, the only reason this film got as high of points as it did is because I think even though they defy those rules, they still go really hard on these different themes. And so, probably realistically, I'd give it more of like a 4.4 or 4.6. But the world building element of it, aside from the story itself, like if you just look at this movie in a vacuum and ignore everything else, aside from that, so much of it just really ticked me off. And the fact that I was in a theater with literally not a single person watching it with me
On the
shows
opening weekend too.
is insane. And you know what's crazy? Demon Slayer came out weeks ago and they're still packed. Okay? Get wrecked, Disney. This is so stupid that you are making films that have so much that are going for it. That most of the legwork has been done for you. And then you get a movie like Demon Slayer, which is based off of a mid manga, to be honest. And it's this successful that it's broken every single record you've had all year. Like, you should be crying in a corner right now, okay?
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's embarrassing that and it's honestly shameful that you did this to Tron with how successful Tron Legacy was.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, to play the devil's advocate, it wasn't like in regards to what Disney considers wildly successful films. Tron Legacy wasn't inherently like a wildly successful film. What was interesting about it was the amount of a cult following it gathered
Are you talking
as
about
it
the
went
original
on.
Tron or Tron
No,
Legacy?
Tron Legacy. So it made probably
Interesting.
about 2 times to maybe roughly 3 times what it was in production. I don't know, think that includes marketing budget, but like overall, it was still like it wasn't like the blockbusters that they're necessarily looking for from the Disney universe. It was enough that they were like, "Hey, we should make another one." So it had something going for it, but it's not like the craziest results that you're looking for. Anyways, I don't know. Maybe that's what they were looking for. Is maybe if they bring a fresh take, it'll really bring in the audiences. Not sure. Point is, the cachet failed. That's what we're looking at. So let's get into that opening scene though. I know we kind of got on that side tangent about what even is going on here. Why did this happen? What is this train wreck? And now you guys are sitting there going, well, what is the train wreck? What are we talking about here, right? Andrew, you want to tell everyone what your thoughts on that opening scene are?
I mean, to be honest, the only character I cared about in this film was Julian Dillinger. Julian Dillinger.
That's
I
crazy.
I did not care about the CEO. Didn't care about her little sidekick. Ares, I kind of cared about at the beginning, but it just devolved so quickly, which was like, yeah, okay. Um, I wasn't hooked. That's what I'll
Mhm.
say. I did not find it to be compelling. We're kind of just thrown into this snowy tundra with some random lady who we eventually figure out is the CEO of NCOM, and we find out something happened to her sister, and then we're told that we should be sad because her sister died of I don't even remember what.
It was like some
Um,
sort of cancer. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and by the end of the film, I mean, characters aside, I don't think anybody transforms or changes by the end of this
Okay.
film.
Wow. You're just blasted through this. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to actually give them the
Okay,
full
the
idea.
opening scene, you get the tundra, you get Julian Dillinger. The one thing that had me interested for this film was the way that was like Julian Dillinger's company and the idea that he's trying to market this to the military. Um and so like opening scene, NCOM, honestly, wasn't even rooting for the good guys in this film. I thought they sucked. I think that Julian Dillinger's character had a lot of potential going into it, and I think they kind of fumbled the ball towards the end, even though I think there's some redeeming qualities to him. Um, but the only thing that really kept me interested was everything going on at Dillinger. What is it, Dillinger Technologies or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I
Also, I would like
personally
to
thought.
recant something real quick. Lilo and Stitch technically made more than Demon Slayer. All the
Okay.
Marvel movies have made
Mhm.
less.
Yeah. Yeah. The in regards to the opener, there was a couple of things that they did right off the bat that totally psyched me away from the movie. Starting off with the classic one we are so tired of in this podcast. It's like, please do something else, and that is the montage. Like, I get why you need a montage because you completely changed everything, but also there are more organic, cohesive ways of introducing us to a film than just going, okay, let me just recap everything in 5 minutes via this monologue from some robot or whoever it was, news sources that are saying what's going on, right? We've talked about this in the new Mission Impossible film. We've talked about this over and over again. I'm not going to get too into it, but like there are better ways to do this. Please don't. Second off is the opening with both NCOM and Dillinger companies, right? I kind of I'm going to push a little bit back on the Dillinger part in a bit, but the NCOM one, classic. Just we are the good guys. We want to use technology to save the world and do the right thing. Right? Classic hero mantra esque personality to all of NCOM, and then you take the Dillinger side of things. And it's, we are here to make money and make military weapons. Let's just think about other examples of this. Okay, stock characters in Iron Man 2, for example, where it's basically a guy saying, I want to make lots of money and make big military weapons as well. Haha, I'm so much better than the good guys. This is what we got from the start with Dillinger as well. And so the idea, the inherent idea of taking something from the virtual world and making it real isn't, it is an interesting idea. I mean, we talked about this in the last podcast. Like, that's just an inherently intriguing concept, something they touched on in Tron Legacy. And so they do go all the way with it in this one, which isn't bad. But then the motives of the bad guys are so stock and so basic that I went, okay, so this is a very, very much a black and white film. This is, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys. We are going to hold them up, and you are going to root for the good guys because they are rooting, because they are trying to do the right thing, and the bad guys are trying to do the wrong thing. Boo. You know? And that's what you got. And so when you got that from the very start of the film, I went, oh no, this is not going to be a film with nuance and intrigue and like interesting ideas to be developed. Instead, what we're going to get is what you got from the very first 6 minutes of the film. Great. So excited to be sitting here for the next 2 hours. Here we go. Yeah, so that was the opening for me, and it just devolves, in my opinion, from there even worse. What are your thoughts on the main character, though? We have this character of Tron Ares. He is the new MCP, the Master Control Program that we saw all the way back in the first film, but this time he's in Dillinger's network, and he is there to run the world as Dillinger sees fit. What are your thoughts on Ares?
Well, first of all, his name isn't Tron Ares because Tron, sadly, does not exist in this film. I'm going to go cry. So first off, why do we even name it Tron? Second of all, I don't know what it is with Jared Leto, but every project he's in, I think, is absolute garbage. Morbius, Suicide Squad, now Tron Ares. It's like he has this curse, this like touch of death to movies he's in, which I don't know that he's necessarily an inherently bad actor. It's just he happens to choose terrible projects to work on. And he's given really bad roles. Like Ares is just a terrible main character. He, from the get-go, by the way, mind you, is already a good guy pretty much. He's just a slave. What is his ultimate program? Because remember, this is where the world building really breaks down. My whole argument for Tron, or the character of Rinsler in Tron Legacy, why he's so good, is because his character has a primary directive: protect the users, fight for the users. And so as long as Clue is not giving him commands to fight or destroy or attack a user, he can work around Tron's primary programming. The second he tells Tron, finish the game and target Tron, or not Tron, Sam and Flynn and Cora and shoot them down, is when it snaps, it breaks Tron's psyche, really. The reprogramming. It doesn't work. And that's why Tron turns. Tron doesn't turn because he's questioning his directives. Doesn't turn because he has this inherent goodness or curiosity about him. He turns because it goes against the primary directive that was programmed into him from the date of his creation. We're never even told what Tron or what Ares' primary programming is other than just obey Dillinger. Like, so we don't even get that from the start. Secondarily, they don't play with it at all because they don't give it to us, which means he just decides to be good. We just get a Finn from Star Wars Episode 7 now, where he's good because it's the right thing to do, and he wants permanence. Why does he want permanence? He doesn't really know, but we don't need to either, guys. Just watch the movie.
Wants to live. He wants to live.
Yeah. And so I was like, I thought going into this film, he was going to have some primary directive and somehow Dillinger would tell him to go against it. And you know what's so stupid? So absolutely retarded is that the character of Athena in this film is more true to the Tron world building than Ares is, because he gives her the directive to get Ares, get the permanence code by any means necessary. And once she's given that command, nothing will stop her.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
her character actually functions the way that a program should in the Tron universe. Ares just gets to do whatever he wants because he's Ares. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess we're
Yeah.
supposed to buy that.
Right.
I just
Well,
found his character very uncompelling. Doesn't have an arc because guess what? He starts the film a good guy. He ends the film a good guy. The only difference is now he can permanently live in the real world.
yeah. Well, it's like there's a couple things that they start off right off the bat with. Once again, trying to harken back to the original film in the 1980s, which why are we harkening back to the 1980s one specifically? I'm not sure. It's very confusing to me why they decided, oh, we're going to make a third installment in this, and we're just going to pass over the second film like it didn't exist and just keep pointing to the first film back in 1980s because that's the one we want to point to. Not sure why
Yeah.
that was an executive decision on someone's part. But anyways, you get that from the start with Ares as well, right? He's referred to as Master Control, pointing back to Master Control Program in the first film. And if you look at that, first off, going back to what you just said, yes, what is his primary directive? Because if you look at the MCP in the first film, the big bad guy, his basic priority is to control that universe and like continually ingest programs, right? That's what he does. And so it's whatever means necessary, he will basically absorb it. He's going into the Pentagon. He's going into programs that are already inbuilt within his system and saying, I'm doing this now, you're not, and starts to consume them. Right. And these things are like fundamental to how the MCP works. And this is what's driving it forward. And why are we pointing back to him and saying, oh, you are also the MCP, but in this universe? What makes this any similar to the MCP at all? It's almost like they said, oh, we're going to do this interesting thing where the bad guy from the first one is now going to be the good guy in this one. It's almost like that's kind of what they were going for. But then you look at it and go, this character is nothing like the first villain that we saw. There's nothing about it that even points to it other than its name. So why are we calling Ares the Master Control Program? Not sure. Secondarily, it's just this character is it's like it's almost like they took a human, put him in the machine, and said, now you're a robot. And then the robot said, no, I want to be a human again. Let's go. Now, it could have been interesting if they wanted Ares to be an ISO, which would point back to the last one and would make a lot more sense. If Ares were an ISO, it would have some idea of agency within it, right? Going back to Quora in the second one, where they are a organic life that has developed within the grid and has some level of autonomy on its own. You could make some explanation for this where it's like they're more dynamic or more agile or able to think more on their own without having to be as controlled by a primary programming, right? Some of these ideas could be developed. The problem is they never say that. We don't know that. It would be an assumption on my part as the audience to assume that he's an ISO, and that's giving them the benefit of the doubt, something that I'm frankly not interested in doing at this point because no, they don't deserve it. But it's like there are ways around this, simple ways around this to make it make more sense, but they don't. Instead, they just say it's a robot that doesn't want to be a robot. Oh no, what is it going to do? It wants to get out. And so it violates its programming and decides to get out. It's just, yeah. On top of everything that Andrew said, which I 100% agree with, there is nothing going for Jared Leto's character in this film. He is just the good guy for the sake of having a good guy to fight in this story. That's what you got.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there are stories you can tell where a program decides it doesn't like its programming, but the Tron universe is not the place to do that when the last two movies have established primary programming dictates how a program functions. Like, that's why Clue is the villain he is. His primary programming is to create the perfect system. Everything he does is an outflowing of that. Same thing with Tron. His character, protect the users, right? Chase is asking, are there any other Tron movies worth watching? We kind of covered this. Tron Legacy, phenomenal movie. The original Tron, decent. I would say definitely watch it if you like 80s style video games.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
but don't watch this one. It's not worth
we
it.
can't speak to the TV show either. We haven't reviewed that.
Oh yeah, true. We haven't seen that, but definitely don't watch this film. Okay. For all intents and purposes, it's a different universe. So why even lump it in with the first two films?
Mm-hmm.
It abandons everything. So, anyways, main character, we talked about him.
Yeah. Now in this story, it's integrally connected to the character of Eve, who's the leader of NCOM at this point. She is heading this flagship of a brand to try to bring it to the future, and she's burdened with this guilt over her sister and her goals to bring life to the world, and I guess eternal life, if you will, through the, what was the code again? The permanence code. Like, she's going to bring the permanence code to the world so that everyone can be permanent and live forever, or whatever she was trying to do. What were your thoughts on Eve as a character? Because even though she's a side character, she's a very, very relevant side character, almost up to the point of being a main character. So I think she deserves a discussion here as well.
I couldn't care less.
And to be clear, what happens is Ares is sent into the world to basically capture her, and then takes her back and goes, he needs to extract the permanence code from Eve, which apparently is imbued into her DNA because it got in there since she saw it. So now he needs to disintegrate her and take the code out of her DNA within the program and give it to Dillinger. And that's when Ares goes, nope, let's get out of here. We're going to be the good guys and save the day. Anyways, continue with Eve.
So this also goes back to Ares, by the way, because I find it so stupid that for some reason he's the only program that decides to question his programming when it comes to killing Eve. It's just so convenient because, we can't have this character die. But why? Why does he question his programming? We don't know. We're just supposed to believe it, that this one program out of the middle of nowhere decides, I'm going to be a good guy and fight for the users. No. Okay. That said, now that we got that out of the way, the character of Eve, I couldn't care less, honestly. Her character, I have no emotional buy-in. I think they really try to go hard on the emotional buy-in, but it ends up being shoved down your throat to the point of I don't want to care now. Of her sister dying of this cancer, and now she wants to go and fulfill her sister's dream, but then also step away from NCOM, but Ares convinces her not to. Hello. That whole dialogue in the car was stupid, bruh. I was like, wow, that's one way to monologue. Okay, thanks for the info dump. Couldn't care less, bruh.
Yeah.
It's
like, I've spied on you all of this time, and so I know why you're doing this. And she's like, oh shoot. And we're sitting there like, you just really wanted to tell us this, so that's how you got that out there, huh?
Yeah. And it's just why that? Oh my gosh. The biggest problem with this film is just Ares. It's just all they needed to do to make him better was give us a catalyst. Give us something that causes his programming to malfunction. But am I supposed to believe it was him seeing water droplets? Because honestly, that was my thought. I couldn't think of anything else.
It's the water. It does it to Athena too. It's the water. All
there's estrogen
that the
in the water.
Want is to get wet. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
That's so stupid. Okay. I 100% don't believe that, but it's funny. I just want to get that out there. I just I can't think of anything else in the film where I could think of what would be introduced to his programming that would result in him being different? Why does he decide to save Eve? Why does he decide to disobey and defy his directive? I get none of that. So
Yeah.
Eve's character I just find uncompelling. One, because I think in her own right she's not compelling, and then two, in her own right, or in relation to Ares, it's just like we're good guys and we do good guy things, and that is the entire. That is the as deep as it goes.
Yeah. And definitely piggybacking off of the whole thing with Tessa is her sister, was decided to take a video game company and say, we're going to take the permanence code within this video game and bring it to the real world, right? This is something that was somewhat hinted at in Tron Legacy, the idea that there was very real attributes that could be taken from the virtual world and given to the real world to bring benefit to mankind. This is something that Kevin Flynn talks about when he's talking to his son. Interesting, but at the same time, going back to what we mentioned at the very beginning, the permanence code kind of comes out of nowhere. There's no explanation for it. There's no explanation for how it works, what it does, other than it makes everything better for the real world. Supposedly, it will solve like cancer for everyone. Great. How? Why? Like, why would a program, like a digital program for a video game, mean that I'm going to be able to live forever? Isn't really gone into, isn't really explained. It's just basically assumed for the sake of the plot. And so us as audiences are supposed to just buy that and go, okay, great. I want this. Yes, I would like to live forever as well. Let's have this go gung-ho. And that leads into, the film as it progresses. So that was the impetus for Tessa's character. And then she dies. And then there's some level of guilt that Eve has as she's going forward and goes, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I am going to find this program, this source code that my sister was looking for. I'm going to give it to the world, and then I'm going to quit my job. There's just so many questions. Why are you quitting your job? Why do you feel so much guilt about this? Like, what did you do between you and your sister that made you have this traumatic experience other than shoot, my sister died? I mean, I'm not saying that people dying is a good thing. No, none of us here think it's a good thing, but it was just Eve felt like a stock character from the start, and the whole thing between her and her sister was built up purely for the sake of telling us why we should care, rather than giving us that emotional buy-in we really should have. And I'm sorry, the one scene in the hospital doesn't cut it. Like, no, that's not what we're looking for. So, yeah, unfortunately, as also side tangent here, but super important for my own psyche to just get it out there. In the middle of the film, you have Eve running away from Athena, who's chasing her into this parking lot, right? She goes up there with her bike and she parks behind a dumpster, and then she ends up knocking Athena off of her what are the bikes called? Shoot, the
light cycles.
The light cycles. Yeah, she knocks her off her light cycle, and then Athena starts running back up to try to get her. And Eve goes, "Oh, you know what I should do? Forget about my bike over there that I just parked. Let me try to figure out this brand new bike that clearly is out of sci-fi stuff that I don't know how to work. I need to drive this."
Well, wait, didn't she use her bike to like ram Athena off of her bike? That's what I thought happened, where she like revs the engine and launches it over the barricade, and it like takes Athena off her bike, and that's how she ends up falling.
Does the bike fall off the edge?
Yeah, it crashes into the ground, and so when she looks down,
I could be wrong on that.
Okay.
Benefit of the doubt. Still, I don't care. Eve's a piece of crap. That whole bike thing, I thought was so stupid. It was in my mind, it was an example of we want light cycles on the real world, and we want Eve to drive one. So this is what the scenario we're gonna contrive to make that happen. Didn't love it. Anyways, yeah, Eve's not great, but that's probably enough on her. We should probably talk about Dillinger now, because he is the motive. He wants to get this permanence code so that he can build weapons that will actually exist in the real world, and he can make all that money. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
I think the thing that was most interesting to me about this film was the references to Frankenstein. And you get this in two ways. You have when Ares is looking through all the files for Eve, and he sees these like excerpts from the Frankenstein novel. And their lines, and they're pretty much trying to go for the idea that he is Frankenstein's monster. The problem with that is just that he is so not Frankenstein's monster in any sense of the word.
He's
And
too
if
good
he
looking to be
is,
Frankenstein's monster.
then not even that. He's just not. He doesn't have any monster qualities. He just does good things, which I think is stupid. But I think Dillinger is a stronger candidate for the character of Frankenstein in the sense that he's trying to achieve power and he ends up creating something that turns against him. I do not think that Ares is the thing that he creates that haunts him. I think Athena is the better example of that. And the moment when she kills his mom is the moment when he truly realizes that his ambitions have begun to destroy him. Because right in the Frankenstein novel, Frankenstein kills Frankenstein's fiance. I think he kills some other people that are important to him, and he ends up telling Frankenstein, I'm gonna haunt you for the rest of your life, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so Dillinger, as a character, is already like on the verge of like a mental breakdown. He's already having one after everything that's gone on. And by the way, I just want to say the fact that it took the military so long to show up when there's freaking light cycles in the middle of the city is insane. Like, how did he not get arrested from the get-go of this film? That aside, though, it kind of it breaks his character. He finally like breaks down and like he basically is pretty much just useless holding his mom by the end of the film. Not sure how I feel about his ending. I do think him going to the grid is interesting. The end credit scene really pissed me off though, with him getting the Sark armor and the Sark disc. I think that was so stupid. I don't know. Like that is an example of the callback that just is shoved down your throat. It didn't make sense to me. It was
In
just there
multiple
for the
ways.
sake. Yeah, it was just there for the sake of being there. Like,
well,
yeah.
it's also just like, where did he get the Sark armor from? That's from
Well,
the ENCOM
why?
system. That's not his.
Well, yes, but also why of all things good on this earth, why was the disc in his grid a disc from the 1982 grid? Because we've already established all the discs on his grid are little triangles or circles that look way different. But all of a sudden, for some reason, we just get an old white and red looking disc. Like,
Yeah.
And for some reason, we also get old 1982 armor in a grid that was created in like 2025.
Yeah. Well, once again, for the callback, it's for the fans, bro. It's for the fans. No. For my part on Dillinger, I think that the big thing that pissed me off about him was just that he's not, as a character, he is the stock villain. That's what he is. And sure, they deal with some interesting ideas around him, but at the end of the day, as the story progresses, especially, he turns into nothing but a petulant child, right? He wants what he wants, and when you don't give him his toy, he gets mad and he screams, and he makes you do it until you do what he says. And he just happens to have a lot of money and a lot of power, so you have to do it. So that's kind of what you get as the story progresses, and he just devolves into more and more of a petulant child until the end of the film, where he loses his mom and he realizes, oh shoot, I messed up. What am I going to do? I'm going to just put myself in my own grid so that I don't have to face the police. Which it's like, okay, I guess somewhat fitting for your character, but there was no depth to him. There was no nuance to his character. There was no reason for anything that he was doing other than he wanted the money and the fame. So it was like everything that you have in this film, from Eve, from Ares, from Dillinger, is let's just storyboard a stock character and put them into the story we are contriving. That's what you got. So was not a fan of Dillinger in this film.
Well, so the reason Dillinger for me is the most at least the most intriguing of the characters is because I think he at least has the most going for him and from the get-go. Those opening scenes with him, they kind of start to go down this path of like his character's want and need is for his mother's approval. And you have that when she like looks at him and says, everything we've built for the last 40 years is resting on your shoulders, my son. But then like another 20 minutes goes by and he no longer gives a flying crap about what his mom wants.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm going to be a child and do whatever I want now. So that, like, right, the opener, I think Dillinger's interesting and could make an interesting character. And then everything he had going for him, they just completely write over as the film progresses.
Right. And that's the thing for me is, sure, the first 10 minutes, you might give them the benefit of the doubt. But once you get to minute 11, you realize that they're not going anywhere with this. They're just making him into the stock mustache twirling villain that we've seen time and time again in films. So,
and by the way, don't get me wrong, I don't think Evan Peters is a bad actor. I think he might have been probably the best of the main three we've talked about. Sure. I just think his character was made very, very. They just gave him a lot of potential and then wasted all of it as the film progressed.
I wouldn't say a lot, but yeah, they did waste it all.
Okay, I guess I'm thinking in comparison to the other characters.
Sure. You got, a little bit and a little bit more.
He's no Commodus.
No.
Not
Andrew.
Even close.
Okay, so the film progresses. We've already talked about a lot of the crap that is in the film. We could go play by play through how it gets progressively worse. Let's talk about Athena. You've mentioned her briefly. She is the sword of Dillinger in this film. When Ares goes AWOL, he says, Athena, you are the one who will now carry out my quote-unquote justice. You will get the permanence code and bring it back to me via Eve. And that's what Athena goes off to do. What are your thoughts on her as a character?
I mean, she has like nothing going for her other than she reaffirms the pre-established rules of the universe. Mm-hmm. She's just a program doing what they're programmed to do.
Right. Well, and it's like, this goes kind of back to, let's just look at the other villains in the Tron series as a comparison. The MCP, while it's like somewhat stock and similar in some ways to what we're talking about here, at the same time, you see that it somewhat evolves and changes as the film progresses, as it ingests other entities into itself. So not that much more complex, but still has some nuance there. In regards to Clue, fantastic, simply because even within this villain, you have this struggle within him as he struggles to both understand why he was created for this purpose, but then the creator of him is in some ways violating his purpose and having him not go in the way he sees himself as needing to go. He needs to create the perfect system. And when Kevin Flynn is no longer searching for the perfect system, he's now searching for these ISOs and goes on, in Clue's mind, this side quest that is actually undermining their original goals. He's sitting there saying, oh shoot, I need to do something about this and I can't believe I have to do this. And you see it in the flashbacks where he's like thinking about Kevin Flynn and these interactions he's had. And there's this underlying impetus in his mindset that you see in his frustration where it's almost like, why are things going the way that they are? Why did you make me only to undermine me? This makes no sense. You are forcing my hand in a way that should not be happening. And so there's like a really interesting organic direction for his character versus with Athena. It's very much I have this program, I'm going to follow this program, and I'm going to do it no matter what. So at least they followed the original goals for Tron in that regard. But other than that, yeah, there's not really anything going for her. And she adds that little tidbit where she kills Dillinger's mother, which adds to Dillinger's character. But other than that, yeah, not a lot going there. We get toward the end of the film where you have Ares he ends up realizing in order to get this source code and bring it back for the people, for the good people of the world, he needs to go back into the original 1980s Tron program that was created by Kevin Flynn himself. He goes in and he sees an apparition. It is, oh my goodness, it's Jeff Bridges himself back from the dead. What were your thoughts on the Jeff Bridges cameo, Andrew?
Woohoo.
You don't like Jeff Bridges?
I think, again, it's just we wanted the 1982 grid, which, again, on top of that, you mentioned this already. Why the 1982 grid? Why are we calling back to that? I was so confident going into this film that Sam Flynn's necklace was going to be important. But lo and behold, Disney did nothing with that. And all we get is a picture of Sam and Cora at the end of the film because Ares is going to look for her. I'll probably get to this once we get a little further in. But as far as Jeff Bridges' character goes, I think it doesn't really make a ton of sense considering that wasn't even Flynn's grid to begin with. It was NCOM's grid.
Sure. I mean, he created it originally. That's like the argument.
Here's what I'm getting at, though. If he did, in Legacy, it's established that programs don't age. So if that isn't actually Flynn, why is he old?
Because, well, does it? Is it because it's just? Doesn't he say when he goes to the grid? It's like, I am a reflection of your mind. I am only here because you're here and you're thinking of me right now, basically.
Well, then why didn't he just think of some hot chick? Is he daydreaming about Jeff Bridges? Is Ares gay?
He's daydreaming about old Jeff Bridges.
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know why? Because they wanted Jeff Bridges and they wanted to have that one clip in the trailer where we saw Jeff Bridges' face and everyone went, whoa!
Jeff Bridges is back. What? What happened? Nothing happened. They just opened up an old save.
Gosh dang it, I wanted Tron in this film.
We'll get to that at the very end. But yes, Jeff did not need to be in there. There was no reason for him to be there.
Well, he added absolutely nothing.
Yeah, other than, here you go, buddy. Here's your prize. Here's the code. Take it and
let
leave
me say
and be
some
happy.
Wise philosophical guru stuff to give you wisdom in your journeys that we will never witness on the live screen and send you on your way. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye. Yep, exactly. So we get to the end of the film and it turns into this fight where Ares is saving Eve from Athena before Athena can take her back into the Dillinger grid, and they end up duking it out until Athena hits that 29-minute mark and shabam, she's gone. What were your thoughts on the climax of the film, how the film ended? What were your thoughts, Andrew?
This is the second time in my life, and the first time was with Dark Phoenix, the X-Men movie. It's the second time I have legitimately been unsure of when the movie was going to end. The climax was so weird. It's like it was just, there was no like traditional like kind of ups and downs. It was just like a constant, okay, we're done. Yeah, but it wasn't like a massive spike. It was just like a general glide uphill, and then we kind of reached a certain point and just went, okay, we're done.
Right,
we're good. Right. Bye bye. That's all, folks.
Yep.
I didn't find okay, you know what? We're just gonna say it now. I think one of the things that makes Tron Legacy so appealing is that it takes all of the things in Tron, improves on them, makes them better, but it still does them, right? You get the light cycle battle, you get the disc battles, you get the grid in all of its technological glory. As it's a movie based on, it's meant to be set in a video game. And so that was the whole premise. But this film just takes the grid and decides to bring it to reality. And we get a light cycle battle. No, we don't. We just get two light cycles racing through the streets with their little trails running around, which apparently can slice things, but also are solid. Like they slice through it like a laser, but they're also just like a hard piece of plastic.
Yep.
Interesting. I would have envisioned they would like melt you if you touched them, but no.
Yeah.
Secondarily, I don't know, it's just they just literally, I guarantee you, in my mind, this is how I see Disney or somebody pitching this to Disney. What if we took the grid and brought it to the real world? And they're like, all right, what's the plot? Oh, we'll figure it out at some point, but that's all that matters.
And then they never did.
Yeah. They just went, what would be cool in the real world? Light cycles, flying little jetpacks, what is the one called that's like an upside down U? I always forget that one's called.
The recognizer.
Oh, let's do a recognizer. Let's do a mothership. Let's do what else did they do? I don't even know, but they did a bunch of stuff, and they just were like, let's make this movie about a jumbo-sized 3D printer that prints killer robots. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's what you got. I mean, obviously not a fan of the ending. I don't think it's worth more to dwell on other than it was a mono fight. I think the bigger thing I am curious about is their themes to this film. You seem to indicate there's some pretty interesting themes. I mean, you gave it a 5 point something, which
wow.
I'm confused how you got that. So I'm curious.
Well, I was too. Okay, I in my mind was thinking like a 4 to a 4.4 or something of that nature. Let me pull up my notes.
I mean, honestly, I feel like this has not been explicitly stated yet, but the fact of the matter is this felt like the cash grab that we were worried it was going to be.
Yes.
That it was just there to make money. And so they took a very basic branding and then did nothing with the actual brand. And they just took stock characters, a stock plot, and gave us a film and said, this has got to be good. It's got Jared Leto in it. Guess what? It sucked.
Yeah. So I think the whole theme they're going for, again, if you look at this film in a vacuum, it works with the story they're telling, is the idea of are we meant to be like, is who we are limited to the reason we were created, I guess. And that's what they're going for with Ares. It's like, can you be more than your beginnings, I guess. And in the sense of like a person, it's like, can you grow beyond your conditions that you were given, right? Like if you were born in an impoverished community and you're malnourished, can you strive for better than that? And in the case of Ares, it's he's created to simply mindlessly obey. Can he grow beyond that? And this idea of like creation, control, this idea of like the fear of what we make, which again, this is one of the reasons I thought Dillinger was so interesting, because he has this monologue at the beginning where he's talking about AI and it's here. And he said, it's not the question of whether we should, it's the question of who's holding the remote or the controls to it right now, which is like, right. Oh, this could actually be interesting because AI is very prevalent today. And we could have a discussion about like because that's Frankenstein's monster. It's the idea of, is all knowledge inherently good? Ought we to pursue all forms of knowledge simply for the sake of it? And the conclusion Dillinger is presenting to us is, it isn't a question of should you. It's a question, or it's not a question of should the knowledge be pursued. It's a question of whether or not you should be the one to pursue it. Because the knowledge is going to be pursued. Now the question is, whose hands are the right hands for that knowledge? And so that's the presentation he's giving to the US military, is basically, your enemies are going to get this at some point. You might as well be ahead of the curve. And so that was one of the reasons I really liked Dillinger's character going into it, is like, okay, he is presenting a very clear, defined take on the themes that this movie could go for.
Right.
And so I really liked that element of it. And clearly, right, his character plays out and he realizes, maybe I wasn't the person who should have gone for this because it screwed me. Or maybe he didn't actually. We don't know what conclusion he comes to other than he should hide in the grid.
Right. Exactly.
So,
and that's kind of the thing for me is, sure, maybe some of these themes are there. Maybe they are present, but they're not developed in any meaningful way to give us a message to take away from the film, other than, oh, this is an interesting idea about AI and their existence in the world and who should hold the keys, etc., etc. Like, yeah, those are interesting ideas. Those are important questions to be asked, especially in our day and age. But guess what? If all you do is just say, this is the theme, goodbye, then either one, we don't get the theme, or two, if you do bring it back around, you're just going to be bashing us over the head with it.
Sure. I think that wouldn't be the theme. I think is the main one. I was saying that's why I liked Dillinger's character from the beginning. I think the primary theme here is the idea that I mentioned earlier of kind of growing beyond your circumstance, or not allowing that to define you as an individual. So they really lean into that pretty heavily with both Eve and Ares characters, even though I don't find them compelling. I do think I thought a lot about the rating system too, which is why, like, I don't know that it really reflects my thoughts on this film. I think the one thing this film has going for it in terms of what the questionnaire actually asks are the themes, right? And I think I gave the villain a decent amount of points for the build up, and then he kind of devolves. I think the biggest things this film has going for it is probably the themes, and then just the action and the music and the CGI, but that doesn't make the film a good story. And so it's like, I don't know. when I was out of the film, I was very disappointed with it. So yeah, I agree. I'm not entirely sure why my review was
okay as high as it was.
Yeah, I was done with it, and I was like, interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
well, maybe Mavericks will be around the same then. And then it wasn't.
No, I mean, the only thing that really, I guess, I gave them kudos for is, in hypothetically, Jared Leto's character of Ares is always being put in worse situations where he goes, okay, now you're permanent. You only have 30 minutes left to make this work. You know, you're captured. You're now in this other grid, and hypothetically, you're stuck there. Things like that. It went, okay, well, maybe there is actually, he is being put in worse and worse situations. The thing is, he just ends up getting out of them rather conveniently and smoothly by the end. So much for that.
Yeah.
And once again, no growth for him as a character, no growth for anyone as a character. So did this conflict really mean anything to him? Not really. And that's a lot of the film and a lot of our impetus and thought process on it. What are your thoughts on the lasting impact of this one? I mean, they geared it up so they could make a sequel. Do you think this is going to have a lasting impact?
Yeah, it's going to be another mark on the ledger that says Disney sucks.
Yeah.
I think in my mind, the Tron movies the main impetus, the core, the heart and soul of those movies isn't necessarily Kevin Flynn or Sam Flynn. It's Tron. Tron embodies everything that the world of the grid is built on. He is all of that in a nutshell. And so, right, they are telling Sam and Kevin's stories in the grid, but Tron's character is so crucial to the development of this world because he embodies every element of it in such a succinct and clear way, right? He is made to protect the users. He is the example of a program who cannot defy their primary directive. And he's crucial in both the first and second films. He's not present in this film. I don't even know why it's called Tron at this point. Not only is he not present, we don't even have Flynn's grid in this movie. We have, for some reason, we still have the 1982 grid. I don't even know why. The main grid of this film is Dillinger's grid.
Yep. Yeah,
Which, to be honest, you know what would honestly been more interesting is if somehow Dillinger got a hold of the Tron program, because Tron is a security program, and put him into his grid.
Right.
You know what else would have been interesting?
Well, yeah.
If we actually got freaking Cora in this film, because guess what? She's a program in the real world, and would have been way more interesting than stupid Ares. But
yeah,
we don't get any of that. And she's also an ISO, right? We don't need Ares. We don't need Eve. What we should have gotten, they could have waited, okay? They didn't want to wait, though, because that's a cash grab. That's how the fact, and I said this before on other podcasts, the fact that they waited 30 years for Tron Legacy and we've only waited 15 for this one shows that they're desperate to make money. It is going to be a cash grab. And so if they had waited, the actor for Sam probably would have been more willing to show up for this film. They also don't necessarily need to make Sam the main protagonist in this film, right?
No.
He was the main character in the last one, just like Kevin was the main character in the first one, and now he's a supporting role. Sam could have been the supporting role in this film, right? He's running NCOM. He doesn't need to compare this to Narnia, he doesn't need a trip beyond the wardrobe anymore. He's already been there. You could have done some really interesting stuff with Cora, taking her innocence and her awe and wonder at the idea of the real world, and have her, after a decade or so, become so disillusioned with this world because, just like Kevin says in the second film, our world is anything but perfect, and Clue doesn't dig imperfection. And so you take Cora, who can't wait to see the real world, and her first impression of the real world is this beautiful sunset, the horizon, the wind on her face, and now she's like living in some city where there are back alleyways and homeless people, and there's dirt and grime and like drugs and alcohol and prostitution, and it's like this is not the real world that she envisioned. And so you could have had a disillusioned Cora who's like, the real world sucks.
Right. Well, you could even take her the other way and say, like, she is still idealistic and naive like she was in the first one. And she ends up being a pseudo villain where she's trying to bring programs into the real world and she doesn't realize the consequences of that. And she's bringing bad actors from the grid into the real world and causing problems when she thinks she's genuinely doing a real good by combining the two universes. Like, that could also be interesting. There's so much they could have done here. And wasted potential. Also, yes, you're just going back to Tron very quickly because I agree with you on that. But like, they set him up to be in this film. Like, you see him fall into the grid water at the end of the last film, and the lining lights on his suit flicker out of red and go to blue, signify he's transformed back into his original self. He is back to being the good guy that we've been looking for this entire time. And so the question was, okay, he's fallen into the water. Where has Tron gone? And the answer is, I guess he went nowhere because he wasn't in this film. Why? The series is named after him. Bring him back. We need him back. Why? So yeah.
Also, just
Anyways,
everything aside, you know what made watching Tron Legacy so freaking awesome was the Daft Punk, the light cycles, and the disc battles. And you know what? Tron had the best versions of those. Rinsler with the disc and
you mean
Rinsler
yeah,
with the
Tron
light
Legacy? Yeah,
cycles. Yeah, was awesome. Okay?
yeah.
Like that was what for those people, right, that just wanted it for nostalgia, that went into that theater. Like my dad is the perfect example of this. When he saw Tron Legacy, he didn't even I still remember, he didn't even know it had come out in theaters. My mom got it for him for his birthday as a disc, and we watched it that night. And ever since then, probably like I don't know if he still does this, but when I was still living at home, he would watch those disc battles, the light cycle battle, like once a month on his phone. Like it was just something that he was like, "This is freaking awesome. I'm just gonna keep watching this."
Yeah.
And this is someone who grew up with the original Tron movie, right? That's the movie that he knows and loves, and yet Tron Legacy is still the one he'll go back to because it looks visually stunning, and yet it also has a phenomenal story. And so it checks all of those boxes. You take the idea of visual media, which at its core has to have a story worth telling, a story that covers all of its bases: character development, themes, ideas, messages, good dialogue. And then you take it the base level and you elevate it with that visual element, the visuals, the lights, the sounds, and when you get all of that together is when you truly have a masterpiece, right? You get
Hmm.
movies like
Yeah.
Gladiator, like Inception, like Interstellar, like Tron Legacy, in my opinion. I know you didn't give it as high of a rating, but I think it did great. Like Revenge of the Sith.
There he is. There he is. Yep. So
So
no,
I mean,
honestly,
good.
no. I mean, I was just gonna say that they stole so much from us, in my opinion, in this film. So much that they had built up for. We talked about Core, we talked about Sam, we talked about Tron. I mean, the only other two things that, or the main other thing that they took from us, which is somewhat minor, but I still think is important, is like there was so much foreboding in the last film. And you see
Mm-hmm.
that with Clue, where he's building up this army and he's going to march them into the world and take it over for the grid. And there's this like massive threat that's coming. And what do you get in this? You get like a couple ladies flying around in these like super drone things that they're flying their jets around in, and you get one recognizer, and that's pretty much it. You get like a sum total of three villains showing up in the real world and a bunch of little drone guys. I it was much really anticlimactic for what we were promised in the previous film. Like for coming to
Yeah,
the
which is
world and
why
like
I
threatening to
wasn't.
destroy everything. What is
Yeah.
this?
Which is why I say I wasn't sure when it was going to end. Like I couldn't tell, is this really the climax of the movie?
Right.
It felt like they were just had like three climaxes that were all like the same level, and the whole movie didn't feel like an arc. Actually, I take that back. It felt like a wave. There's like three little waves that just kind of crested, and it was
Yes.
like, oh, okay, we're done now. Um, yeah, no, I think everything else aside, as someone who enjoys both of the original Tron movies, by the way, or I guess the original and then Tron Legacy, right? I still enjoy watching the original Tron for what it is. It's not going to be
Sure.
my go-to, um, but like Legacy's leagues better than it. Um, it didn't give me any of that. Like it was going for the nostalgia, but none of the nostalgia worked. It felt like Disney going, "Here, Tron fans, here's your medicine. Take your medicine, swallow it, be a good little boy." And I'm like, "No, stop."
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
that's
you
pretty
know,
much it.
you know what your takeaway should be though, as the viewers. Guess what? If you want a film, because what does this film have to offer you, right? You're asking, all right, well, you've said it has good visuals, it has good sounds, it's visually entertaining. if you want visually entertaining, just go watch Demon Slayer. You don't need to see any of the TV show. Just go watch it. It'll probably be more entertaining.
That's hilarious.
That's not even a plug for the TV show. That's just, please do not support Disney. Right? If you want something visually entertaining, go watch that instead. Demon Slayer is beautifully animated, but Disney, like, I think we actively need to start boycotting them for them to really realize that this is actually terrible media they're putting out. And it's not just that they're putting out terrible media, they're actively destroying franchises that have been around for decades. Mm-hmm. They're destroying Marvel, they're destroying Star Wars, they're destroying Tron now. And it's like, is there nothing that Disney cannot soil at this point?
Nope.
And so
Disney's trash.
They are. At this point, I'm convinced they cannot tell a good story. And when they do, it's like an accident, like Thunderbolts. Like they just happened to throw something together that worked, and we're like, oh shoot, we happen to save. We happen to make something that was successful, but it still didn't make us any money because all of our other projects are trash. Yeah, no, It's not worth the watch. If that's all you guys came here to see, by the way, if you should watch this or movie or not, the answer for me is no, and I'm pretty sure it's the same for Maverick.
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And there you go. That's the pod. I mean, I don't think there's any more we could trash it without just reiterating ourselves, but Disney does not deserve your money for this one, for sure. Do not watch it. We didn't even talk about hacking CCTVs and how they could literally see every camera, because that doesn't make any sense, but that's not worth it. That's the pod. We hope you all enjoyed. We'll be back, as we always are, next week. We'll see you all then.